Alrighty, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is LaughNgamez here. I'm back with another Starcraft 2 1 versus 1 bot AI cast. We have got ourselves what should be a good one here today, as it's going to be Aeolus taking on ANIBot. ANIBot, a bot that is relatively new to me anyway, but has been very fun to watch. And I'm excited to see how it can do versus Aeolus, as Aeolus is a really strong Protoss bot that does basically just a few things very well. It's a stalker aggressive bot, which isn't too surprising, as stalkers are one of the best units that benefit from higher micro potential, which is one of the things these bots do very well. And so, ladies and gentlemen, before we get too far into this match, make sure to go ahead, click that like button. If you haven't already, leave a comment down below saying more bots if you want to see more of these bot matches. And then subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. Big thanks to those of you that do send in replays for me to cast, as it helps solve some of the legwork of me having to pre-screen the games, which I've kind of started doing, not to a serious extent. I'll watch in 8 times speed, like the first 5 minutes of a game, mainly looking at the minimap and be like, okay, doesn't look like we have any major derpage, which, of course, is something we do get in these bot games occasionally, but we're kind of spoiled with how good they are these days. There's not a lot of bot games where you're just like, oh, this is atrocious. No, they are very cool projects for the most part. Bots like ANIBot do really help with having a big variety of styles, so you never really know what you're going to get between these two. And just thinking about it, I don't think I've cast enough ANIBot versus Phobos, because those are two Terran bots that do create some very wacky situations, and I think that would be a fun and fair matchup between the two of them. Now we do have Aeolus going for that Nexus on the low ground. Twilight Council on the way already. If you're going to go for Blink Stalkers early on, a quick Twilight definitely makes sense. Now, one of the weaknesses of Aeolus is that it is very susceptible to cheese, so it's quite lucky that it's not getting cheese this game, I think. We see it hasn't even started building a Stalker or a Zealot yet. It's just rushing right to Warp Gate, which is one of the approaches you can take as a bot author. I'm going to have to see how Crawler does versus Aeolus now, because it does look like it may be a little susceptible to Ling Floods or something like that. But yeah, well, yeah, no, it's just one of the design choices you have to make as a bot author. Like, for example, you can have a bot that can reach within the top 10, but have certain weaknesses in it. And sometimes cheese defense is something that sort of comes with time. Aeolus, though, is quite greedy in the way that it does open up. Third Nexus, not a single unit out on the map. I mean, any rush would absolutely have just destroyed it. Now that Warp Gate is going, though, we are going to get that trickle of Stalkers crossing the map. And yeah, Aeolus has effectively got away with this greedy opening. The third Nexus already on the way, pre 4 minutes. This is quicker, I think, than any human could ever get out a third Nexus because of that speed mining. And then we do have the Stalker starting to engage the Marines. Stalkers are, well, one of the best units suited to fight Marines, as they do have that higher range than the Marines. But the ramp does actually mean one of these Stalkers does walk up and get shot, since it loses vision of the Marines and doesn't remember they're there. Meanwhile, the second Stalker does go down to that Cyclone. Now we do have high-sec auto-tracking on the way from ANIBot, and that's an interesting upgrade for this stage in the game. I guess that's kind of just like a blanket cover for ANIBot to ensure that it has adequate air defense. These Stalkers do have blink now, however, it did not blink far enough away to get away from that Cyclone, and so, yeah, the Stalker kind of missing the mark there. I wonder if maybe that's, yeah, I don't know. Aeolus, maybe it has, like, it's just trying to path out of the regular range of the Cyclone or something there. The Stalkers are coming forward. That one starts to take some damage. It does blink back successfully that time. And the Cyclone gets another lock on, and that does get just broken. However, these Stalkers are definitely quite injured. We've got ANIBot taking a third base in a rather risky position, as this third is building right in the attack path of Aeolus. If it was built at the other base, it might not have been found, but it does get canceled. And that's the risk of Terran building your third base on location instead of in your main and floating it over. Now, Stalkers are looking to push into the natural of ANIBot. The blue Terran could be in a little bit of trouble here. It's just a little trickle of Stalkers crossing the map. There's 4 gateways out for Aeolus, and they're just working overtime, putting out as many Stalkers as they can towards ANIBot's side of the map. The trades aren't horrible here for ANIBot, but the Stalkers are starting to overwhelm. The Cyclones really are the MVP as far as trying to resolve this. The fact that the Stalkers don't quite blink far enough away to break the lock-on is a big deal, and maybe where Aeolus could have some micro improvements. But for now, these units are just trading out with each other. The base does get lifted off as ANIBot feels this threat is enough, or maybe there's an HP threshold on the command center to lift them off when they take a certain amount of damage. It does look like the Cyclones are doing a great job in handling these Stalkers, though, as the Stalkers just get locked on and do die fairly quickly. We're now getting Mag Field Accelerator to make those units to make those Cyclones deal even more damage to those Stalkers. And yes, we'll see whether Aeolus can maybe get up a big enough group of Stalkers in order to overpower ANIBot. ANIBot does have a new third base building. It does have this other third base location up. A big SCV transfer was taking place, but very good programming from ANIBot. The SCVs realize there's a threat in the way, and they do actually turn around, which is something a lot of bots would not do. So actually, well done to ANIBot for trying to make that happen. We'll see if it can push out and actually get these SCVs where they need to go at the new base. It does look like the Cyclones may be able to get them there. Oh, one SCV gets shot. The rest of them do turn around. They're like, no way, man. No way. And the Cyclones for ANIBot are doing quite a good job against the Stalkers of Aeolus, as these bots are just constantly trading out. Cyclones are rather fragile units, all things considered. They just deal a ridiculous amount of damage. Now, the Stalkers are doing what they can here. Just walking in one at a time, though, is not necessarily the best strategy to deal with Cyclones. So, Aeolus not taking the best trades. It is being pushed back extensively by ANIBot, which is just pumping out these Cyclones. Currently, only 2 Cyclones have died. I could have swore it was more, to 39 Stalkers. That is some ridiculous efficiency. I wonder if these guys are going to get repaired when they go home. Now, ANIBot does have its bases in some very weird positions in this game. Aeolus, though, it can sort of sustain these ridiculous trades with its 5th base on the way already. We are getting +2 attack. If we ever get armor upgrades for Aeolus, that would be a big deal too, because, well, armor might make these units not die as quickly. To the Cyclones, Stalkers are moving forward once again. They are getting locked on by the Cyclones, and the way to deal with Cyclones with Stalkers is basically just to blink on top of them, or to try and kite them and out micro them individually with the Stalkers, but you kind of need critical mass of Stalkers in order to make that happen. So sometimes it's best just to trade out with a big aggressive blink, and that's something that's very difficult to program into a bot, and that's why Aeolus is just losing so many Stalkers against these Cyclones right now. Aeolus has a ridiculous amount of probes in this game. It's up to 97, getting up a 5th base. Shields is on the way. It does have 6 more gateways going up, so that Stalker trickle is going to turn into a Stalker flood with this 5th base getting up. But we'll see, because ANIBot has been building up in that supply, just adding in more and more Cyclones, adding in Vikings too, which are great against Stalkers on the ground. This base will be instantly saturated up for Aeolus, though, so that's quite nice. We get a big probe transfer over there. Stalkers will try their luck once again with the +2 attack. They are moving forward. Injured ones trying to retreat. They do retreat far enough to break off most of the lock-ons. However, those are some very, very injured Stalkers now, and we are seeing the power of Cyclones in the hands of bots. Like, they are just very, very good units. Quite the counterpart to Stalkers when it comes to bot micro, as Aeolus is just doing what Aeolus does, and that is throwing away a lot of units, just trying to get a kill, regardless of what it's attacking into. The red Protoss is warping in a ton of Stalkers presently. I do find it interesting that it's actually pulling up quite a few this round. 16 Stalkers in all moving out now, thanks to those 14 gateways. It can really pull up a lot of units. Maybe it will take some better trades now. ANIBot is just getting +1 armor on the way. Aeolus has got +1 shields. That may help out a little bit. But for now, ANIBot does have a base getting up in the bottom left. The Stalkers are going to try their luck at this once again as they move forward, targeting down some of the Terran units, but the trades are not looking that good for the red Protoss, as a lot of these Stalkers do indeed just get targeted down and killed, and then once they blink back, it seems like they're pretty much out of the fight, as they just kind of sit there and wait to get picked off. So ANIBot's Cyclones are just definitely a match for Aeolus, thanks to the +2. It is able to pick off that one Cyclone, but ANIBot seems content just to sit back, absorb these attacks, and kind of let it happen. Aeolus is going to try again with 20 Stalkers this time, so the number of Stalkers does seem to be growing, interestingly enough. I would be curious if we'll eventually get like charge lots out of Aeolus. We do get a extra base up, so the spice must flow as Aeolus wants more units out here. These Stalkers on the low ground are kind of taking a bit of a better trade against these Cyclones. That's going to go drastically worse, though, as they do try and move up a ramp into the clones. And then the Stalkers, they're kind of in like a retreat mode, it seems, where they then don't decide to attack back on in, weirdly enough. And that may be where a lot of things are going wrong for Aeolus. However, Aeolus does still have a lot of Stalkers, more reinforcements coming. +3 attack is almost done, so that will help out. Maybe, just maybe, it will be able to overpower ANIBot one of these days. I think the best way to do it would be to go for Zealots, as Cyclones don't deal extra damage to Zealots. Have a few of them to buffer. That kind of forces the Cyclones back. Then the Stalkers can fire without getting melted. Yeah, anyway, we do have more and more Stalkers being warped in. How many is Aeolus going to attack with this time? 21 this time, so it does seem to just... I wonder if it's time between the waves or just a certain amount of units that Aeolus wants. We do have the blue Terran attacking on in. Defender's advantage is a real thing, so Aeolus may be able to handle that. One moment as I pause. My apologies about that. There was a mosquito in the room, and I knew that was going to bug me if I was casting, so it must be dealt with. And, of course, as soon as I pause the video, I look around and I can't find it, so took a second, but we got it. All right, so we do have Stalkers now pushing out, kind of countering ANIBot's attack, and the defender's advantage in StarCraft 2 is real. Aeolus does lose a Nexus, though, which is quite painful. It may be able to clean up these sort of chunks of Cyclones, as it does still have a good income. It's warping in more and more Stalkers. The Stalkers seem to just have a limited number of shots they can get off before they get killed, but now we have a big problem for Aeolus, as it is indeed warping in units right where they're going to die, and that's just not good. ANIBot is gutting the natural of Aeolus, and the red Protoss just did not trade well enough today. It just threw away over 100 Stalkers. 171 Stalkers to 19 Cyclones is not a ratio you can trade with, and all these bots are doing is exactly what they're programmed to, so maybe Aeolus needs a bit of a change against mass Cyclones. Its micro is generally quite good, though, so it's difficult to say, like, oh, Aeolus needs to change completely, but maybe something different needs to happen in a game like this. Liberators for ANIBot. This composition is very, very lethal and doing quite well. We've now got a Thor on the way. Plenty of bases for ANIBot as it just takes the map. And I do not see Aeolus coming back in this one. It's warping in more and more Stalkers. But the blue Terran is indeed taking everything. And yeah, I think it's just a matter of time till we get everything cleaned up here, as Aeolus is pretty darn dead. I don't see any miracle dark shrines or anything bringing this game back. Liberators, very powerful units, difficult to program against. Very slow cleanup from ANIBot, as it does kind of just bog up on this ramp, as probes are just being rallied in constantly. This base does end up getting found. Aeolus has just given up making units as its cyber core died. It might have been sending those probes back to attempt to rebuild the cyber core, maybe. But it shall not rebuild. Not today, anyway. Quite a long cleanup for this video. But in the end, ANIBot does get it done. I don't think this ends in a draw or anything like that, as Aeolus does get wiped out. GG.